Lalin, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm going to try and be as brief as possible because I know you guys are on information overload. I'll move that down. So what I've done was I gave each of you a kit on your chair, and I want you to take that home with you and look through it at your leisure, and take one for anyone you know, because it's a bunch of documents that could potentially change your life. So just to let you know who I am, where I come from, and why am I doing this session on financial literacy, I'll start off to say that I'm a Mi'kmaq woman. I'm a member of the Listuguj Band, and I work as the Director of Human Rights and International Affairs at the Native Women's Association of Canada. And I'm also a lawyer and in Ontario. So one of the things that I do every year, in addition to all my regular files in human rights and international affairs, is I apply for funding for financial literacy, because it's something I'm extremely passionate about, both because of what I've lived on a personal note as an Aboriginal woman, but also because I know that that's the key to our escaping poverty, our escaping violence, our escaping many of the issues that impact on our community. When women are empowered, they have more choices, and one of the ways that we become empowered is by having financial security and financial prosperity, right? Okay, so just to touch quickly on my personal story, if I say to you now, I'm a Mi'kmaq woman and I'm a lawyer, you might say, well, I can't relate, that's so unachievable, it's not something that I could ever accomplish in my life. But just to let you know, I was a single mother living in extreme poverty. It's hard for me to even imagine today that that was my life, that I was on welfare, struggling, living from month to month, not knowing how I was going to make ends meet, alone with my daughter at 22. And anyway, what was so incredible about that, and that's why I'm so passionate about this issue, is that I want to give back to other women in the same situation or who are in other difficult situations, so that they know no matter how bad it is, you can overcome. So I made the decision that either I could live in poverty and struggle as a single mom and be in that situation for the rest of my life, or I could be a single mom living in poverty and struggle for 7 years or 9 years, but then actually make an income. And so that's what I did. I went little by little, went back to school, and my band helped fund me, but I had to work, and I had a lot of help from family and friends, and with them I wouldn't have been able to do it. So that was, I probably lived on about $11,000 a year, just so that you can get a context of where I was at in my life. When I got my call to the bar and I had my first job, I went from earning $11,000 a year to earning $77,000 a year. And my first job as a lawyer. Woohoo! And although, when I do this with women, when I do this workshop with women, I always say to them, what do you think I did with that extra $66,000? And they're all like, bought a house, had savings, had financial security, do all these great things. But the reality was I didn't have any financial literacy. I had no one to give me those skills to teach me about money. And coming from my childhood, money was never discussed. There were people who had money and there were people who did not have money. And one of the things that I challenge you all to do is to look at what your concepts are of money. So I want you to just take a second now and write on a piece of paper anything derogatory that you ever thought about money or heard growing up. For example, for me, as an Aboriginal woman who I don't drink or do drugs or smoke cigarettes, and I try to follow my culture and traditions, I used to think that to be spiritual, I had to be poor. So that was a belief that I had. So I want you each to take a minute and write down 3 quick beliefs that you had that were very negative about money, that either you held or that your family held, or that you may even still think today. So I'll give you a minute to do that. There's no wrong answers, just so you know. spectrum in history have lived an extremely abundant and prosperous life. Over a period of 5,000 years, we had more than enough of everything we wanted to eat, to nourish ourselves, to supply for our families, to trade. We were comfortable, and we had lives that were filled with lots of prosperity. And it's only been in the last few hundred years that our people have come to know poverty. So that's why for me, I'm so passionate about raising this issue with our youth to say, it is not our way to be poor. It is not our way to be struggling. It's not in our way to be on welfare and to be living a low income life and not having hope. And one of the things that I had to reconcile for myself, and the reason I asked you to write all those things down, was because for me, money had a moral value. I used to believe that if I had money, I was greedy or selfish, or like I said, I couldn't be a spiritual person. So something that happened as soon as I started making money was that it would come in as fast as it went out. Even having that thought, even saying those statements that money comes in, money goes out as quick as it comes in. Those are intentions that we're putting out in the world. And now you have things like The Secret or different modern movies that talk about manifestation and intention, but that's more new age. These are actually indigenous teachings that have just been brought forward again, because it was always our way and in our teachings that whatever we declared, we gave thanks for in the present form. If we needed water or rain, we gave thanks for the water and rain. If we needed food or meat to hunt, we gave thanks for that meat that wasn't already there. And it would manifest. And it had a whole circle where we offered tobacco and gave thanks before and after we received something. And so when we look at it through a cultural way, we can actually take it apart and see that our people have always been very rich. And it was only in an elder teaching me that money has no moral value. Money is merely a trade. It's something that we use as a currency. And if we have more money, then we can do more good, right? So it's not about whether we do bad or that money is bad or good. It's about what we can do with it, right? So today, as an Aboriginal woman who makes more money, I choose to do more for my community and to give back and help encourage and support other Aboriginal women. Because only in raising each other up are we going to succeed as an Aboriginal community. And the UN has released report after report that demonstrate that when we invest in an Aboriginal woman, she is giving back up to 90% into the family and into the community. And the same can't be said for Aboriginal men, only 30%. And that's all Indigenous men that have been studied at the UN across the world. So we know absolutely that by investing in Indigenous women, it's going to have a positive impact, not only on her family, but on her community, because that's who we are, is we take everyone with us when we heal and when we discover security and prosperity. So can anyone tell me any of the things that you wrote down for your negative association with money? Just yell it out. Raise your hand and don't be shy. Yeah?
Money will buy you happiness.
Money will buy you happiness. Okay, so I have a blog that I write daily, and so it was actually about that. And what I said in return is that it's not the money that buys us happiness. I've been poor and I've been rich, and it's a lot easier when you have money. That's for certain. When you're poor, thinking about money is about all that you can do. You worry constantly about money and when you're going to get money. And when you actually have money, you almost never give it a thought. That's when I realized I had reached financial security, was that I had not noticed when I got paid. Can you fathom such a notion? For me, that's huge. To say, oh my God, was it payday this week? And not notice. For me, that's a miracle. Having come from where I came from, to be in a position to be able to say, I didn't notice that my pay was deposited, that's a blessing, right? So how I did that is what I want to get at with you today, because it's not always about getting more money. It's about having a shift within ourselves that we need to get rid of the poverty mentality. Is there some other example that you can give me about a negative association for money?
We're broke.
Yeah, so affirming that, right? When we affirm that to the world, we're constantly putting out to the universe that we are lacking, we don't have enough. It's the same notion as stealing or conning or scamming people. We're constantly, usually when people are that way, they will constantly reiterate that to themselves and to the universe. And if you meet them 20 years later, that's exactly the same situation that they're in. They will remain broke, right? And so one of the biggest tools that I used from elders' teachings, and that they brought me back to our community, was about living in gratitude, even when I had no money, and about the notion of getting to happiness with no money, right? So something that I use, and I always try to pick green notebooks because green represents prosperity and abundance. And so something I try to do every day, and not always, but I try to do it every day, and I bring it with me and throw it in my bag. So if I have doctor's appointments, or if I was going to say on a bus, but I don't take a bus, I just drive. But if I have to wait anywhere, I will take note, and I'll write at least a list of 10 things that I'm grateful for each day. And it's not just about I'm thankful that I have children. No, the exercise is about I'm thankful for what, because why. And the reason that's important is it actually gets us to take stock of all the blessings that we have in our life, so that even though we don't have money and we might feel broke, that we always realize that we're rich, right? If we're alive every day, then the Creator has intended that we have something great to live for another day. If we can see, that's another blessing, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I have crazy writing every day, and my husband's always saying, what do you put in that book, you know? And sometimes I write things that I'm grateful for now, or sometimes I write things that I'm grateful that haven't happened yet, but I act as if they've happened. And when I go back years later and I look, all of those things have happened. All of those things have manifested in my life because I was open to receiving them. So that was one of the greatest gifts that an elder could ever teach me, was the notion of being grateful and not feeling sorry for myself. And when my kids used to say to me, Mom, are we broke? Or Mom, are we poor? I used to always affirm to them, no, we're rich. We're so rich. We have each other. We have a home over our head. We have siblings. We have aunties and uncles. We have grandma. You have 5 grandparents that are alive and in your life. These were all the things that I would reiterate to them. And if you're wondering, how does this all tie into money? It does. It ties into money because of the fact that, as I was saying, back to my story, when I went from earning $11,000 living in poverty, I had no debt, and I lived and struggled, but I had no debt, right? But I also had no skills or no credit history and no knowledge of money and how to operate with it. So once I went to earning $77,000 a year, when I ask people what they think happened, they think buy a house, had savings, bought bonds, stocks, whatever. No, in actuality, and I share this because I wanted to help other people, I had 18 credit cards between my husband and I, and we incurred $40,000 in debt in 1 year. We were living large. And the reason is because we came from poverty, and we knew how to do poor. We knew how to survive in poverty without having debt, but we didn't know how to live having financial security or having even abundance. So it was about getting rid of it as quick as I could. So as I continued to heal and continue to work with elders, I started to discover the issue of financial literacy and learning about managing my money and educating myself. And I was well in my 30s at this point. I remember remotely hearing stories of a girl that I went to high school with that said her parents had bonds for her, but I had no idea what that meant because it was nothing that I was ever familiar with. So I started doing my own research into all of these terms. And now, and I feel old saying this, but when I was looking into it, there was no internet, you didn't have Google, you didn't have all these great tools that you guys actually have as possible resources. And so some of them I've given you in your kits, and I really encourage you to make use of them. So for example, you have the website from the Government of Canada. Here I'm struggling and I have my handy dandy glasses. So this page is the Financial Consumer Agency, and it tells you specifically how you can get your credit report, how you can get your credit score and why that's important, how you can improve your credit score, right? These are really simple, basic tips that you can use. And I printed out, and there's probably, because there's not that many of you, there's not 100 people left, there may be enough copies for everyone, but this other resource, which is Understanding Your Credit Report and Credit Score. So this brings you line by line how credit companies assess your credit score, how you can damage your credit score, or how you can improve your credit score. And the one thing I want everyone to realize is that no matter how far down you might have come in your personal finances or destroying your credit, including bankruptcy, and I'm not a financial advisor, I'm a lawyer, but I can say this safely, that I have seen and personally know of people who have been bankrupt not once, not twice, but 3 times, and they actually own a home today in their life. So there's no situation. I know people that have gone to prison, I know people that have had jobs, there's a number of things that have a quick impact on your credit rating. So there's nothing that you can overcome. So let me back it up a little bit to say, all of those comments that if you look in your kit, when I asked you about what money means to you, I want you to take the time when you're bored or when you have a moment for yourself and look through them and see and start to track new statements for yourself that you can come up with that are positive about money, so that you can start to begin to release these negative thoughts that you once held. Because it's only in changing those thoughts and beliefs that we're actually going to be able to release it in what we do in our day-to-day life. So I like to tell people again, after this first experience and getting help and having the 18 credit cards and the $40,000 in debt, do you think I learned my lesson and I began to have a great credit score and have lots of abundance? What do you think happened next in my second or third year that I was making good money or above the national average of income? Anyone? Anyone have a guess? Actually, so I had 18 credit cards the first time, right? And then I learned my lesson, and it was extremely painful, and I went through stress, and I was devastated. The next thing, 4 years later, I had 9 credit cards and $20,000 in debt. It was to the point that I started to think that I would be worth more dead than I was alive. Money had such a hold on my life that I was consumed with money and could not fathom how I could possibly get out of that situation. And please know, like I never gambled, I don't drink, I don't do drugs. It's been 16 years that I don't smoke cigarettes. So it was things like taking the family to Disney, like taking 15 people to Disney. There was like, because I had no idea about financial literacy, or I had no idea how to manage my money, or learning about stocks, or tax-free savings accounts, or building a budget, or tracking my spending. And it was only when I reached the point that I was actually contemplating that I was worth more dead than alive, that I hit a wall, that I finally shared with a person. And if you'll notice, people don't talk about how much money they make. They don't talk about that. There's a lot of shame and secrecy surrounding money. It's a vulgar topic to discuss. You don't talk about what you make. You don't talk about how much you're in debt. You don't talk about those things. But the issue is we cannot overcome, and especially for women, helping other women, we cannot overcome our current situation unless we reveal what it is or how bad it is. And one of the tools that you can see and you can access for free is to get your credit score. Find out your credit score. You can do it for free online with www.equifax. It's all the information, the emails, the websites, everything's in the kits. Once you find out what your score is, you can determine what your goals are. And oftentimes I'll talk to women and I'll ask them, what is it you want your financial picture to look like in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? And they'll say, well, I want to be happy. And if we have general terminology like that about where we want to be, we're never going to get there. I need you to take the time in the privacy of your own home to write out in your own journal what that means for you. What do you want to achieve in a year for your personal finances? I don't want you to worry about the how you're going to get there. I want you to just put it down on paper, and dreams come for free. So I think you'd be shocked and amazed that when you start to write things down and then later years pass and you look back at your financial diaries that you've collected, that you will have actually accomplished more than you could have ever imagined. So I want you to look at big picture things. So where you want to be in 5 years, where you want to be in 3 years, 2 years, 1, and then break it down. Just to give you some concrete examples, and I know I'm kind of all over the place. The reason is that this is normally like a day-long workshop or a 2-day workshop, and I'm just trying to pull in little pieces to get you to catch your interest enough so that you'll look at the materials, take them home, and actually make them work for you. And it's so much easier than you could ever imagine. So if you do nothing else, if you don't read the material and you do nothing else, there are 2 things that I want you to do. One is find out your credit score, and you don't have to share it with anybody. That's the most important. So then you can know where you can go from there. Almost all banks, and there's lots of websites that are included in your kit, help you to give you specific tips of what you can do to improve your credit score over time. And you don't have to tell anyone if you don't want to. So that's one major thing. The second major thing that I want you to do is to have a spending journal. You need to start tracking. So basically when I hit that wall that I was telling you about, and that desperate point in my life, I finally reached out to a friend who was courageous enough to share her story with me and about how badly in debt she had gotten. And when she shared that with me, she also told me about a book that's called How to Get Out of Debt and to Stay Out of Debt and to Live Prosperously. Well, I went to the library and I actually read this because it's like from 1970s or something. It's a totally old school book. And I thought, this is, not something that I would ever usually pick up. But that book actually changed my life. It gave me really concrete things that I could do to turn my life around. And the first thing that I did was writing down, tracking my spending. Do you know that I realized by every day, so it was a similar book to that, you could get a dollar store notebook that you bring with you everywhere and do kind of a game with it. And even if you don't want to improve your financial situation, do it for a month and it'll shock and amaze you at how much money you actually do really have. So one of the things that I discovered is by using this, tracking my spending, I could see that the number one things that were eating up my budget were buying coffees outside the home, buying muffins outside the home, buying lunches while at work, and eating out, takeout food. And so when I started to take that, and banking fees, ATM machine fees, all those NSF charges, rent to owns, they're killers. And that's one thing you discover. When you start getting your finances in order, you're going to see that people who have a lot of money and who have good credit rating pay the least interest, and they get the most perks. And people who are struggling the most, living in poverty, pay the highest interest and pay the most fees. So it's really in our best interest to learn these skills and how to get out of that situation. So once you start tracking, even like I said, even if you don't choose to do anything about your situation, if you start tracking it for a month, you're going to be shocked and amazed. For me, I was discovering I was spending $1,200 a month on takeout. My family should have had shares in Tim Hortons. We were spending $8 a day on the drive-thru for my family order. And why is that important? It's because of the cumulative effect. We might not realize it in the day, but if you take that $8 and times it by 7 days, that's $56. Times that by 4, that's over $200 a month. Times that by 12 months, that's over $2,000 or $2,400 you're spending on Tim Hortons. And it's even more if you're at Starbucks. So oftentimes I hear women say, I have no extra money, I don't have it to spend. But when we start to track it, we can see that there is actually a lot of room for leeway. So one thing, bringing your own water. We spend so much money on water bottles. Well, I know I did. So it's not only good for the environment, you can shave off money there. Buying a case of pop if you want and having that and bringing them to work every day, that's another small little way that you can save money instead of buying it at the corner store every day. Something we have to do at work because a lot of us do that, right? Those are just some examples, and they're all in your kits. Another issue is the notion, and it's a cultural belief about generosity and being generous of spirit. Oftentimes when people live in poverty, they feel like they can't afford to share or they can't afford to give away because they don't have enough. But it's a well-known fact, and especially in our communities. I don't know if when you were a kid, for me, when we would go trick-or-treating, we always went to the poor communities to get candy because we knew that they would give the better candy. And often my mom would say, well, that's how come the rich people are rich, right? Because they give out this little cheap candy. But for me, what I've discovered is by being generous of spirit and finding ways to give back to community, prosperity has been attracted to my life more and more every day. And although money can't buy happiness, money can certainly pay for things that help to make you happy. It can give you the choices to go on vacations. It can help you to support your sister's children to go to ballet class. It can help you send money back home for your grandma and grandpa to help them out. Or it can help you have achieve a good way of living in your community where that you actually have an opportunity to go on holidays and to experience different things that are out in the world that you never thought possible before. One of the things people always say to me is, oh, did you win the lottery? Because I always see that you're traveling. Well, that's because I always set goals for myself. I'm constantly writing out my goals, and I'm constantly putting deadlines on them. I have to-do lists every day for at home, to-do lists of things I want to accomplish for my dreams, financially, to-do lists, what I want to accomplish in my work plan at work. Writing things down helps us achieve what we want to get to. It was actually Oprah that I heard when I saw her in Calgary that talked about the issue of writing things down. Until we put pen to paper, and not on our phones or not in our computer, actually using a pen and paper, there's something that happens when we write it out. It starts to manifest. We make sure our intentions are known for ourselves, but to the universe, and we begin to be open to receiving them. I'm just trying to think of anything else that I wanted to touch on. So about the notion of being generous of spirit, a lot of times in our communities we learn about our rights, Aboriginal rights or treaty rights, or rights for our nation, rights that we have within our community, rights that we have as Indigenous peoples, as women, and as an individual. And that's fabulous, that's really great. But we also have to balance with that responsibilities. And when we achieve economic security and even prosperity, we can help in those ways to give back some of our responsibilities. And even if we're starting at a place of extreme poverty, there are a lot of ways that we can give back that don't cost any money. We can be babysitting for family. We can go through our clothes and get rid of clothes that we're no longer using, or items around the house that we're no longer using. These skills all go to the same notion that when I give away what I don't need or use, it makes room for new and more prosperity in my life, right? So it's always putting out that intention that there's more than enough of everything I want and need. And the one thought I used to cling to when I didn't know how I was going to pay my bills or how I was going to get through the next week was I used to think I have every single thing I need right now to live, right, regardless of anything. And another tool that always helped me was my father always said, and I've talked to people who give advice in money, and they've confirmed that it's a good motto to follow, is the first thing that you need to ensure is that your lodging is paid, because that's your personal security. So your home is paid and your food. Without those two things, you can't necessarily survive or thrive, right? For every other bill, even if you're behind, you can contact them and make arrangements, right? So some of the ways you can rebuild your credit are doing things like making minimum payments, or even if you make $1 more than the minimum payment with bills that you have, that can reduce your interest, that can reduce the amount of years it'll take you to pay off that bill. There's always a way to overcome, but you have, like I say, you have to be prepared to make the commitment to yourself and take the time that it's going to take for you to get to know yourself, get to know your habits, and get to know what areas you want to improve and what you really want with respect to money, abundance, and prosperity in your life. You're worth it, and not only that, as women and as mothers in our community and as leaders, we can teach other women how to live a life that's without struggle, that's full of gratitude, and that helps them to believe that they can accomplish anything they want beyond their wildest dreams. I know we're running out of time, so like I say, I'm all over the place because of the fact that I shortened this, and I know it's at the end of your day. So I talked about the book, I talked about all the tools, journaling your spending, that's extremely important, getting your credit file, knowing what you're up against, how to improve your credit. There's specific handouts for that to give you the exact step-by-step instruction. And also, I am willing to go, I go on weekends, I go within my work plan, but at night or on weekends, I will, if you're having a meeting with a group of women in your area or from your organization, if it's in the Ottawa area, I'll go and give a free presentation, which is longer than this one, that goes step by step and leads women through, because I think it's a valuable exercise. And I want to get this information out. And if people can have this tool for them, then they can help other women achieve financial security as well. Did anyone have any questions that they wanted to ask that I haven't touched on that I can help respond to?